Hello, welcome to the Wildline Podcast. I'm your host, Dan. I have Chris with me.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me, as always, Dan.
Love it. So we're going to do the weekend review show for February, 28th through March 1st. It's March 1st. It's 65 degrees here in St. Louis.
I hate you.
There's people like mowing their lawns, I think. I don't know what's going on. Spring is early here down in the middle South, I'll call it. It's not really the deep South. In any event, we're going to walk through the top 10 of the box office for this weekend. Two new wide releases, The Invisible Man, and then the other one's actually not on the numbers list, but it should. It's that Heroes movie, My Hero Academia, Heroes Rising.
Oh.
Anybody? Anime? I'm gonna have to find out what it actually made on another website because they don't have it on here.
That was wide?
Yeah, it was wide and top 5.
Oh my gosh.
So it's actually not on like a lot of these websites now that I'm looking. So we'll have to figure out how that one did. In any event, we'll do somewhat deeper dives on those two, especially The Invisible Man. Then walk through the rest of the top 10. Then we have Time Machine, right, Chris? Got Time Machine?
Yep, you bet.
Yes, love it. And then we'll walk through what's going to go on the next few weeks at the box office. Let's just do this. Number 1, of course, The Invisible Man, Blumhouse, Universal, that dynamic duo, $29 million for the weekend in 3,600 theaters. Per theater average was just about $8,000. In terms of context of how that is, tracking was looking like, I think Blumhouse Universal said about 2021 going into the weekend. Other people industry-wide were saying a little bit higher in the mid-20s. So the fact that it pushed to 29 is pretty amazing. Yeah. Also note that as of like even yesterday, they were looking at like 26. So what's happening there is there's tons of walk-up business. People are just, they're not doing the pre-order or anything like that. They're just showing up. And I think a lot of that is through word of mouth.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
This is one of those, I think we both kind of felt it but like the last couple of months, ever since the trailer dropped, that like there's a little bit of hype going on here. And then it just builds and builds and builds. But, you know, critics love it too. 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, 76 actual score. Those are both fantastic numbers. Top critics, 85%. 70 actual score from them, and then the verified audience, 89% fresh score and 88 actual score. That's pretty fantastic for a horror film. Although, would you call this a horror film or a thriller? Because they keep going back and forth.
It's definitely walking that line, and I think that's one of the smart things that it's doing. Is it's not trying to hit that niche horror crowd, right? But it's also not super like obliquely thriller. I don't know. I mean, I feel like we have to compare this to Hollow Man. Do you remember this movie?
Oh my God. Why would you do that to us and our listener base?
Because how do you not, right? It's it's a classic example, I think, of they picked, you know, obviously a very specific style and auteur, maybe. Is that going too far to call?
No, yeah, that might be a bridge too far.
Maybe a bridge too far.
No, but Upgrade, that seemed like an auteur film, right?
Yeah.
So,
and
I don't know.
Oh, I was referring to Paul Verhoeven of Hollow Man.
Oh, he did that? I had no idea.
Yeah, Verhoeven, man.
Oh, that's why it's so sick.
Yeah, it's disgusting. Yeah. But I think it's really interesting, actually, and I'm surprised I haven't seen more, you know, C-grade think pieces about this. This almost exactly 20-year difference between like one of the most misogynist takes on the Invisible Man,
disgusting,
and the most feminist take on the Invisible Man story.
Yeah.
That movie had a $95 million budget and it made $190.
Oh, God.
So that it's really interesting to see that like how much in reverse we've gotten from the kind of, you know, big tentpole sci-fi fantasy horror thriller kind of thing, to really like the only way to make it work nowadays is to really do what Blumhouse is doing and make it for $7 million and then make, you know, 3 or 4 times that just on the opening weekend. And I really think this one's gonna have legs. What about you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Cinema score of a B+, post tracks 80%. The definite recommends kind of low at 53, but I think they took that Thursday night. And I think in general, a word on the cinema score too, all these scores are kind of dinged a bit because it's horror. In general, a cinema score of a B plus is like okay, but for a horror film, it's actually really good. Like Get Out got an A minus, and I would consider that the most like audience pleasing horror film of the last decade, probably. So it's up there in that range. I think it's gonna have fantastic legs. Now you have me thinking about Hollow Man, and I went to go see it. I don't know who I saw it with. I think this must have been what was that high school?
Yeah,
it must have been high
2000.
school. Yeah. So I remember going to see it, and obviously a big horror fan. I saw everything for the most part, and I just felt there's a scene in there, and I think you know the scene, where essentially, I guess he rapes a woman. Essentially, is what happens.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's
and
pretty awful.
I don't think I've ever been so uncomfortable in a film ever as a teenager, and I walked out of there. And ever since then, I've seen it once. I saw it like 2 or 3 years ago. Rewatched it, and it kind of felt the same. Yeah, and I was just like, "What the hell were they thinking?" No. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is obviously a very different take on the whole thing, but it was just bizarre. And it's interesting too that like in order to get this made, obviously you have that the $7 million sort of price tag on it that gets Universal sort of like in Blumhouse like, yeah, this makes sense. I mean, you could never do a big budget version of this, right? I mean, there's no, I mean, they already failed to do the Dark Universe thing, Darkverse. What the hell is it called?
The Monsterverse?
Yeah, Monsterverse with Tom Cruise and what was that, 2017? That movie is obviously a train wreck.
Oh, God.
But definitely the old school, probably I don't even know what the timeline or breakdown is or pivot point is for that. Like, when did those movies stop making sense? Like a $90 million Invisible Man movie or like a $200 million Mummy movie with Tom Cruise. Like, is that like a comic book movie sort of body count there? Like, did they destroy those films? I don't know, because like, it's strange.
I mean, I think you could look to the director of Invisible Man, Lee Winnell. Like, he kind of caught on to the change in the horror, trend back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, because obviously he got his big break with helping produce the last few Saw movies, and then wrote the script for Insidious, and then went on to direct and write chapter 3 of Insidious. And so, I mean, that's where the money is. And I mean, we talked about the Conjuring universe just last week too, and it's like you gotta have either something mid-budget and like PG-13, or if you're gonna go harder than that, you gotta make sure it's a very small budget.
Yeah, exactly. And I like, so $7 million production cost on this, print and advertising budget. I saw people like throwing numbers around online, like it's probably 10x that.
Oh,
like,
yeah, probably.
You're talking like 70 million for like worldwide marketing, probably at least that. So it's sort of like they're taking a risk. They're taking a risk on the marketing side, which I think the studio has much more control over than what the director is doing, right, behind the camera. Like they can certainly get involved, but at the end of the day, you really have to trust that person to deliver a product that's gonna, like, I love saying product in film. I don't know why, it makes me feel so slimy. Deliver a product or film or story, whatever you want to call it, that's really going to engage people. You have to take that bet. Their bet wasn't necessarily on the filmmaker; it was on the marketing campaign, right? And so, like, that's where more of the money is at. Didn't they have a Super Bowl commercial for this or something? And so, like, that's where they're really pouring in the money, as opposed to something like a Fantasy Island or The Turning or the Grudge remake. They spent like nothing on those films and kind of knew they were trash. So it was like, why spend $100 million to market it if it's just going to make like $20 million total domestic?
Right. And I think that's one of the key things is, like, I think Blumhouse has made its bones on not just being like a niche horror production house, but also on being a group of people, specifically Jason Blum, who like know what good movies are. And so, like, when he puts his chips in a basket, it's not going to be in the budget, but once he sees the final product or close to the final product, he's like, all right, we got to spend 10x marketing on this because it's actually good and people will actually go see it and we'll make tons of money.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the opposite of what Hollywood's been doing since the advent of box office tracking, I feel.
Yeah, I feel like Jason Blum has sort of figured out not only a formula but a way to sort of kind of create a secondary industry within the main industry. Like
Mm-hmm.
he gets these little nuances of micro budgets and how you promote things and marketing and sort of the social media era, which has been like 20 years now.
Yep.
But like he understands what the major studios just don't get about how to engage an audience. Like there is nobody at a major studio who can make a movie for $7 million and promote it like this and make it look the way it does. Like I haven't seen it yet, but you look at the trailer and you're
Yeah,
like, this could be a $50 million movie.
Oh, totally.
Like,
It doesn't
you can't
look like
even-
7 mil at all.
Yeah, so I have no idea how he's doing that at all. The nice thing about Invisible Man's performance here too, like, so definitely an over performance. Where's it going to end up, right? So with the horror film, thriller, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, whatever you want to call this thing, typically have lower legs. So if you think a good performing film has a 3x multiple, so that would put that at like just below $90 million. I would say if this is a normal horror film, probably not. You're probably looking at a 2.5x multiplier, 2.7. But because of this style of film, and I think because of Elizabeth Moss and her performance and sort of being up in front and center with this, I think there's sort of almost like a prestige feel to it, where I think the legs are just going to be stronger than a typical horror film. I don't see any reason why it doesn't make 90 and on to $100 million domestically. I don't know. What do you see? Do you think this thing is gonna run pretty long?
Yeah, I mean, 100 seems pretty optimistic. I think definitely 90, but
Yeah.
I think right around there. I can't imagine. I mean, I guess I think that I also think that we talked about this past few weeks. Like February is a very weird time for release dates. Like, you're either choosing something perfect or you're choosing like the worst possible. And like I think Sonic and Invisible Man figured it out, and Call of the Wild and Birds of Prey totally just biffed it. So but there's a lot of big movies coming out the next few weeks. So I don't know. I don't even know if it will make to 100, but it'll all be water under the bridge because it'll still be one of the biggest success stories of the year, I think.
Yeah, and it sort of solidifies the Blumhouse Universal partnership in that model of micro budget, big marketing budget, and bringing in the cash. What else to talk about this one before we move on? Audience wise, 47% female, 53% male, which sounds like a little bit tilted towards male, but the average audience is about 55% male. So this one's a little bit more higher on the female audience than the average audience. Under 25 was 34%, over 25 was 66%. I found that surprising because the under 25s didn't necessarily show up more than they would for an average movie, which I thought was very surprising to me because I thought this would play huge young, but it is R. So you're not going to get like the younger teenagers to show up for this.
Exactly.
Racial breakdowns, 45% white, which is lower than your average audience, 20% African American. I think that's because of the co-stars here. Normal audience is 12 to 13%, 19% Latino, 16% Asian other, which is actually a lot higher than normal as well. So yeah, I think this is it's a big win for everybody involved. I think also in terms of the broader narrative of horror films, it's a rebound. Right, like we've talked about the last few weeks, sort of Fantasy Island, The Turning, Gretel and Hansel, The Grudge, Black Christmas, Doctor Sleep, even none of them financial successes. All of them, except for Doctor Sleep, critical failures. This one is loved by critics, loved by audiences. So it is definitely just like Joe Biden, the comeback kid over here for the horror genre. And I'll say this on Letterboxd, it's sitting at 76 out of 100. To give you comparables for that, that's where The Witch sits and Midsummer. So like it's high amongst the film aficionado nerds on Letterboxd. So we'll see if that I don't think that's gonna stay. No. They tend to sort of settle down a bit, but so that was a great performance from Invisible Man. Obviously we'll keep track of it over the next few weeks. Let's move on to number 2, Sonic the Hedgehog at $16 million. A good drop here, 39% drop. Still in 4,000 theaters. Per theater average is 3,800. Sitting at $128 million domestically, worldwide at 224. I think for the money that they dumped into this thing, it's a good performance. especially the worldwide. You know, it is making some money overseas. I don't know if like people in Russia know about Sonic, but apparently they do. So it's doing okay there. I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Like 224 worldwide for a movie like this? I guess from the start, it seems like a good performance, but I think if you look at it just on paper, you're sort of like, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think people were expecting it to do a lot worse, and just that low expectations then just ended up being a win for them. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And so, but a good drop for this weekend, so it's not really losing its legs too much. That was number 2. Number 3 was Call of the Wild. I'm trying to compare my notes to see where My Hero Academia ended up because no one's following it besides Deadline.
Right. And it looks like it'll be number 4.
Yeah, number 4. So number 3 was Call of the Wild, 20th Century Studios, 13.2 million, a 47% drop, which kind of feels high to me for a movie like this on its second weekend. It's supposed to be a family film. You want to see drops definitely below 50%, but kind of in the low 40s would be good for this. It did add theaters, added 113 theaters. Per theater average in the second weekend was 3,400. Total gross so far is $45 million. And then worldwide, it is looking at $79 million total. It feels very underwhelming.
Yep.
Compared to the production budget, which I don't know off the top of my head what it was. I think it was high though, like in the 70s, maybe 70 million. Maybe even 100.
I think we went over this last week, and it seems, and I was actually looking since we talked last week, comparative to Disney's White Fang back in 91 with Ethan Hawke. God, another Jack London adaptation. But like, I think that movie is it not only they have a real dog, but also that was a budget of 14 mil and it brought in 35. Okay, so yeah. Like, still not overwhelming performance, but like at least that made sense. This just makes no sense at all.
No, and I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking over there, greenlighting this with that kind of budget. Doesn't really add up on paper at all. Nope. Why you would go? I mean, Harrison Ford is a tough play too. He's so old. Like he doesn't really have it as an A-list like person to anchor a film. He's more of like a side character person now. Not a great performance for Call of the Wild. Number 4 technically was a film that nobody's following apparently. My Hero Academia: Heroes Rising. This is from Funimation Films. So that is a streaming service for anime. I know nothing about anime, so I'm kind of at a little bit of a loss at this performance. But I think, it did what here? 5.5 I'm seeing right now. 8.8 total. So maybe it had a pre-release before this. Funimation had a previous movie just like this, what they put out wide, that nobody really followed either, and it just popped up on the top 10 list of the box office with nobody sort of predicting anything about it. So it's definitely one of those niche audience films. Critics seem to like it. There's not a lot of ratings for it. 91% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Jeez.
Verified audience is a 98%. 96 actual score. All audiences exactly identical to that. Post track of 100%. So what you're seeing here is just a different type of release. Under 2,000 theaters for a very niche audience that knows all about it. Clearly, even generalists who look at the box office are sort of like, whatever. Not really a family film. Again, I don't know that much about anime, but it kind of skews towards male and older. 61% male audience here, 39% female. Families were only 13% of the audience for this. General audience making up 87% of this. Have you heard anything about this? Do you know anything about this world?
I know that, through my students, I teach high school, and it's definitely one of the more popular anime titles, not counting like Pokemon and Dragon Ball. It is seemingly like it seems to be that it's one of those animes that's like kids got into when they were younger, but because it's skewed older, it's one of the few animes where like it seems like they both enjoyed it when they were in 4th grade and still enjoy it now when they're in 12th grade. Gotcha, so I think it seems like a pretty smart play to put it out in the theaters in America, because the anime audience is growing, and even though, as we know, most of that anime consumption is done online, it seems like every once in a while it's not a bad idea. I think you had if I'm looking at the highest grossing anime films list right now,
Ooh,
and
nice.
all of it is Miyazaki and that movie Your Name from a few years ago,
Classic, yeah.
by Shinkai, and then his follow-up from last year, Weathering with You, which I don't think ever broke the top 10 here in the US, did it?
I don't think so. It was on the edge there for a while.
Yeah. And then the rest of that is like Pokemon and Dragon Ball. So like to have a new title like hit the mix for this kind of film, I think makes sense. I hope that I'm trying to look for like a production budget, but like
no, there's nothing really that I can find. It's like, so it's Sony. So Sony owns Funimation, and so that's a whole streaming service. It is kind of a newer thing that we've seen a little bit of, streaming services either producing content or becoming a distributor for content, kind of go in the reverse way from streaming to theatrical. You don't see it that often, but I think we're going to see it a lot more going back and forth that way. Now, is it going to last? Probably not. This is definitely a movie where everybody wanted to see it. It's going to go out and see it this weekend. So I don't think it's going to stick around for too much longer. Okay, so that was number 4. Then number 5 is going to be Bad Boys for Life. 26% drop. What? 4.3 million. This in Jumanji, I don't get it. It's like I don't get the math. 26% drop, lost 260 theaters. Sits at 197. It's going to break $200 million domestically this week for Bad Boys for Life. $405 million internationally. Just crushing. Not much more to add on that. Like, it's a phenomenal performance. And, I think the sort of the final thought on that was, a really kind of a big bet to put it out in January. But if you take that bet, sometimes it pays off massively, like this one.
Can I just add one thing about Bad Boys for Life that and my film studies class this week, as we do every semester, I show the kids a clip of Do the Right Thing. And for the first time in like 7 years, I had a kid be like, "That's Martin Lawrence. Bad Boys for Life is awesome." And so, like, good work, Sony Pictures, for bringing back relevance to Martin Lawrence's career for teenagers. That's quite the feat in 2020.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Number 6 was Birds of Prey, Harley Quinn, whatever you want to call it. 4.1 million. 40% drop, which is decent. Sits at $78 million here domestically. Internationally, it's at 188. I finally saw this film. And,
that's right.
You know what? It's pretty good. It's not that bad. I don't see why anybody would complain about it. I mean, it's very much standard. Like, you couldn't, like, it's comic book movies with swearing. Like, after Deadpool, it's like, okay, I get it. Like, she's transgressive, and it's a fun movie. I can see why it probably didn't really connect me with a broader audience. It does kind of feel, I don't know, a little bit nichey, like it's just that character, and if you're not into that specific character and her sort of vibe, then you're not going to really enjoy it. I enjoyed it because I thought it was fun, but like I can see it not playing with a 4-quad audience. I mean, obviously, like, it's not going to hit everybody in the bullseye there. Not a great performance, gonna lose money. Kind of have to question DCEU, which path they're gonna take. I would think they're probably gonna take the Joker path and make more adult stuff, stick with that side of it, and then stick with Wonder Woman, which is probably gonna be the biggest film of the year, or close to it, depending on how this virus sort of plays out. But so I think it's gonna be, I think this is kind of a misfire for DCEU. Next is Impractical Jokers. Again, True TV, 3.5 million. It went up 28%. It did go wide, so it added 1,500 theaters. Per theater average sucks though, $1,800 per theater. It's at 6.6 million. Basically a jackass ripoff.
No, you were right the first time, Jack.
So yeah, I mean, again though, it is fascinating though, because we are starting to see with the Funimation thing and this, you are starting to see different strategies with releasing movies and different distributors. We had Neon, you have A24, you have Blumhouse, and these are kind of on the lower end of the totem pole of those sort of indie distributors, but we're seeing more of that, which I think is pretty interesting and cool. Next was 1917, 2.6 million, a 37% drop, which is pretty good. Lost 400, almost 500 theaters. Sits at 155 domestically, which I think that's very surprising to me, even with the award stuff. 362 worldwide.
Yeah.
People love the World War I movies apparently, or Sam Mendes, I don't know, or Roger Deakins. Let's be honest. Then next is Brahms Boy 2 from SDX, 2.6 million, 55% drop, which isn't horrific for a horror film.
Yeah. We usually expect 60, 65.
Yeah,
right?
60, 65. So apparently people want to go see this. $16 million worldwide box office on that one.
Oh.
So, I mean, I don't think they spent a ton on marketing, obviously, but like, it's not going to make any money. So, oh well, what can you do?
So no Tchaikovsky, The Boy 3.
Yeah, exactly. Fantasy Island next at 2.3 million, a 45% drop. Lost about 60 theaters. Per theater average was pretty anemic. $855 per theater on its third weekend. You usually don't drop below 1,000 on your third weekend. So Sony Pictures, that's a misfire. $24 million. I don't even know what the play was there. I mean, what was the play?
I think Blumhouse probably, like we were saying before, like they had a possibility of an idea on paper, and then when they got the first cuts of both Invisible Man and Fantasy Island, they're like, all right, shove this one out first, and then we'll put all our pennies into this basket.
That's so true, though.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, it's all these little bets, and they don't really sort of put the chips on the table until after the film's probably in the can.
Right.
Technically, that's the top 10.
You want to talk about Jumanji again, don't you?
I do. I just have to talk about Jumanji. So I actually started to watch a little bit of it today, and I'm like, I kind of get it. Like, it is the definition of a 4-quad movie, right? Especially the new one, because you got the older characters, young characters, you get all these, famous people. You get like The Rock, you got Jack Black. I mean, just Danny Glover. There's something about it that does harken back to like the 90s. Like this film in the 90s.
Yeah. Danny Glover, Danny DeVito. That's smart.
I mean, it works. 27% drop. 2.1 million. Sits at 313 domestically. Let's see where it's at worldwide. This is stupid. $789 million worldwide. So he's gonna cross the $800 million mark worldwide. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like Sony has a formula now with this one, and they get it. And I think they're just gonna keep copying this. Outside of obviously Jumanji series of movies, but it's sort of the blueprint of you get the right stars, the right type of story. I mean, because here's the thing, when you think about like IPs and like brands and stuff like that, was the Jumanji brand all that strong when they redid this a couple years back? No. Like, it was like a kind of a fun movie that you knew if you grew up in the 90s with Robin Williams, and that made you sad. And like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, it's Jumanji, that's cool. Kristen Dunst and like that kind of stuff. It was not a strong brand that I think anybody under the age of 30 really identified with, unless they knew it from their youth.
Yeah.
So they remade it and they repackaged it is really what they did, and filled it with sort of these new characters and these new places. And they made it hooky and they made it a spectacle, and it freaking worked. And they released it at the right time. So, we
were talking. Sony is doing well with Bad Boys and Jumanji now, but I do think that it's looking sketchy when Bloodshot comes out.
I'm a big fan of Blood. I think it's gonna do well. I really do. I don't know why. There's something about it. It just looks so stupid. And I was like, yeah, Americans will love this. Okay, so that's top 10 with Jumanji. Parasite crossed the $50 million mark. A couple. We'll talk briefly about limited releases because we are outside the sort of award season. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I have to mention every episode.
Yeah. But is it top 20 now, right?
It is top 20. Yep, just right on the edge there. $730K. Terrible per theater average. $2,700. $2.4 billion domestically. I wonder if they have worldwide on this one. Oh, good. 7.6 million worldwide. Just a wonderful performance for that film. We also had two new wide releases, not wide releases, limited releases. Wendy, which is from the director of Beasts of the Southern Wild. If you remember that one, that was super buzzy. Did that win a lot of awards? I don't really remember.
It was just nominated. I don't think it actually won anything, but yeah, it was huge buzz. And then I feel like the whole world forgot about both the movie and the director.
Yeah, it was very bizarre because you look back on it. It wasn't that long ago when that came out, and like right now, like people are just like whatever. And people are definitely about whatever the follow up here, Wendy, which I guess Searchlight, kind of a Peter Pan takeoff here. Open in your typical 4 theaters in New York, Los Angeles, the Angelica in New York, ArcLight in Los Angeles. Only did 7.5K, $7,500 per theater. That is really, really bad for limited release. It's freaking horrific.
And Beasts of the Southern Wild seemed to have like a new reckoning on film Twitter with the release of this new one, where it's
what
just
do you mean?
Just like since this movie was about to be released, like everybody's now going back and reassessing Beasts of the Southern Wild and calling it racist and overly sentimental and hokey. And
well, I thought that too, because I actually saw Beasts of the Southern Wild at the Angelica when it came out in New York. Yeah, and I'm almost positive I did. And I remember sitting in the theater being like, yeah, this is really good, but like I have some problems with it. It seemed a little bit like I had a lot of problems with it, but it was like I didn't want to like say them out loud to people because I was like, this is, I don't know, it didn't sit right with me. But this one's probably, I don't know why is this failing, do you think? I mean, it's got buzz, people on film Twitter are talking about it. It's the only reason I know about it.
Yeah. This guy just waited too long. It's been 10 years.
Yeah, it's been 10 years, right?
That's too long. I don't know what this guy's been doing since then, but it definitely seems like he did not capitalize when he had all the publicity.
Yeah, he just, I don't know. I don't even know if it's good or not. But people are not showing up. The other one is, which I saw a couple trailers for, a couple of press things for, Greed. Steve Coogan.
Oh, yeah.
So not doing great either. Looks like only $5,200 per theater.
Oof.
In the similar 4 theaters release here. So not strong for limited releases this weekend. But, it is a dumping ground for them, right? Like, there's no real reason to do a lot of limited releases right now because you're so outside of the award season. So that's why we're kind of getting the scraps, it seems like.
I do gotta say that it's weird that we haven't seen much talk or any really increase happening with Ordinary Love. Have you been watching this one at all?
No, I don't know that one.
That's Liam Neeson and Leslie Manville. It's like a tearjerker romance. She gets diagnosed with cancer. Thing.
Oh, yeah, I have
but
heard of
like it played in front of some big movies. Like it was attached. The trailer was attached to what I just see. Both Portrait of a Lady on Fire and what movie did I see a little while back? Knives Out. So
interesting. It's got great reviews, 93%.
Right. Yeah, it's got great reviews, and it's been out for 3 weeks limited now, and while it's adding theaters, it's still like barely crossing over 150K.
Yeah, it's playing locally at our art house theater here in St. Louis. So it's definitely going for that. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, 93% Rotten Tomatoes from critics, 55% audience score.
Oh yeah, there you go.
But only 11 ratings, so nobody's seen it. There's one guy who's dragged that down 20%. What a jerk. Okay, cool. You want to do? Let's do Time Machine.
All right, let's hop to it. Back in time to 1995, 25 years ago. This weekend 9, March 3rd through 5th of 95. Any guesses? It's a movie I've already discussed on the Time Machine recently.
95.
It was number 1 this weekend. It was an 853% increase.
What?
In its 12th week of release.
God, I have no. What is it?
Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, classic.
So I had to do some digging to figure out what the hell happened.
Why did it go
here.
so high? What the hell's going on?
Yeah, so if you look at the previous weeks, it's completely outside the top 10. And then you look at February 4th through 6th, it's at the bottom of the top 10. And then when it actually was released back in November of 94, it held steady. So I think what happened here is that New Line, which was actually pretty common back in the 90s, and actually perhaps was still kind of common all the way through the 2000s, where like a movie was close to being done at the theaters in its initial run, but before sending it to second run or letting it, be in that purgatory before blockbuster release, they actually like re-released it. And so what happened is then you have it suddenly in the top 3 now for a few weeks going into March, because what it was trying to do, I think, is just like get that extra cash from like the Jim Carrey heads, like the teens like us,
heads.
right? Like after the huge success of Ace Ventura and The Mask, like they're like, okay, let's put this in another 1,000 theaters and just see if we can squeeze out a few more dollars before we send it over to Blockbuster. And it made $11 million that weekend.
I love it. it. It's such a classic. Classic.
So that was number one. Crazy thing that would never work nowadays.
No.
And
that
then
sort of releasing strategy never works now.
Right. But then number two, what a movie. And its debut, it probably thought for sure it was going to get number one. But then here comes New Line re-releasing or adding theaters to Dumb and Dumber and probably doing a marketing push to steal it, is Man of the House. Do you remember this movie?
No, I don't remember this at all. Yeah. Man of the House. What?
Chevy Chase and Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Oh, no. Gross.
A young boy refuses to accept his mother's new boyfriend, a lawyer, despite the man's attempts to win his respect. Meanwhile, disgruntled relative of a criminal he prosecuted seeks revenge.
What? That doesn't make any sense. Like, how could you make that movie today?
You could not.
Like, you couldn't. The byline would be like, I don't know what this is. It's like nonsense. It's like the syntax doesn't work.
No, it's a Disney Channel movie. but with like a really hard-edged B plot. I don't know.
Yeah, like a noir B plot.
Yeah. And I actually don't remember the B plot at all. But this A story was there were so many movies I feel like that tried to capitalize on the Home Alone success, right?
Oh, now I'm looking at the box. I remember this box at Blockbuster back in the day.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas, is he still around or is he dead?
No,
he's still alive.
I don't think he's dead. I feel like there was some reason I was just looking him up.
Drugs. It's always drugs.
Yeah. This stood out to me because I just watched.
I've seen this movie.
Oh, you?
I'm assuming. Yeah, I've definitely seen this movie because I had a crush on his mom.
Who played his mom? Farrah Fawcett?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Oh gosh, and now I'm looking at the movie
poster,
definitely
Farrah Fawcett.
And it has
I
Chevy
totally
Chase
remember this movie
wearing the Native American feather. Oh my god,
dude! The '90s were just
a wild time.
Heady, and it has the guy. What's the guy from Cheers? Norm.
George Wendt.
Yeah. He's in this.
Yep.
I've definitely seen this. Wow, you could not make this movie now.
No, absolutely not.
Nope.
And the other interesting thing about this is that Bonnie Bruckheimer produced it, and she is Jerry Bruckheimer's ex, as well as the creator of such other big hits of the 90s and 2000s, like Hocus Pocus and Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood.
Oh, there you go.
So like she really knew her audience for a while, but then like in the middle of this, she tries to go male, and it does not do well. It's really weird that you have not only this kind of plot, which is there's no spectacle, there's no hook, there's really just you're banking on I think they were banking on the success of Tim Allen's Santa Claus translating to Jonathan Taylor Thomas, his co-star of Home Improvement, but then by like putting Chevy Chase in the other role and like Farrah Fawcett, like both of them were past their prime at this point. And so there's really no reason why I think they would have imagined they could have made money other than just thinking like they had the new Home Alone, but they really did not.
Yeah. Oh man, interesting. Yeah, that's a real sort of hidden, not a gem, but just like a lost film. Like all of those movies are just lost. We all lived it. We all saw them, and then they're just gone.
Yep.
No one's gonna remember these things and stuff to some computer database when we look it up. Like, what
in
the F
podcasts
is
like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Budget
awesome.
of 22 million, box office total of 40 million. So it actually, I mean,
It might have made some cash.
probably made a little bit, especially.
Yeah,
I
they
would
just
not
played
as-
it
know.
on repeat on the Walt Disney Channel.
Yeah,
Disney
exactly.
Channel growing up, yeah.
And finally, number 3 that weekend was the Brady Bunch movie. It had been number 1 for 2 weeks in a row. Now in its third release, 31% drop with 5.7 million. That is a movie that I also don't think you could make today. Like we saw,
No.
the only way they brought back the Addams Family was through animation, and somehow that was still a hit. But I just remember thinking how weird it was that they were going for this PG-13 version of such like a squeaky clean IP.
Yeah, wasn't it kind of like a I remember it being the show. It's so weird thinking back that in the 90s, like that was a brand that you would bring back.
Right.
Like, because it's like, when was that show on? The 60s? Am I right about that? Okay, 60s. So like a 30-year sort of, thinking back 30 years, what is something that you would bring back, like a TV show, like from the 80s? Or I guess, no, we're talking 90s then. It would be. So early 90s. Saved by the Bell? I don't even know. I guess Saved by the Bell would be a good example of something.
I think it is coming back.
Oh, is it? As a movie?
No, as a show, I think. I don't know.
Gross.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, do you remember this movie at all?
I do. I actually remember it unfortunately well because I had watched Brady Bunch reruns on Nick at Night. So
you're like a Brady Bunch head. You're like a follower.
And it was just weird because like not only was it trying to like put edge on something so squeaky clean, but also because like, it just falls in this kind of netherworld of like, but it also kind of it's in this netherworld between like family friendly and made for adults, but it also like spawned this almost like obsession with bringing back. I don't know if there was any other movies before this one where they brought back old IP as something more edgy, like all the way through like Starsky and Hutch in 2008 or whenever that was.
Oh my God, there were 2 sequels to this.
There was another sequel? I know. I remember the very Brady sequel.
Brady sequel. Then there's a television film called The Brady Bunch in the White House.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That aired in 2002.
Wow.
Betty Thomas did this from St. Louis. Holler. What else
That's
did she
crazy
do?
because I was thinking like this could have barely made sense to make a sequel out of because it was on a $15 million budget. It made 46, which is good, but like that's good enough to make a sequel. And then I don't know.
I'm looking at her directorial films and I can't even.
Betty Thomas.
She did Private Parts after this.
Oh,
How
right.
it started. Dr. Doolittle, holler, back to that one.
Oh, yeah.
Call back. 28 Days with Sandra Bullock.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? In 2000. Yep. I Spy. John Tucker Must Die in 2006. And then her last film was Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Squeakquel in 2009.
That's her swan song.
Which did like $500 million worldwide. So,
Amazing.
she also produced, wait, hold on. She also produced Can't Hardly Wait. So everything bad that she did doesn't matter because she produced Can't Hardly Wait. All right. 1995. Very strange time. I think if young people look back on that and they're like, I don't understand any of this. We were there and we don't understand it. So like, it's just the way that
barely made sense.
It's Holly weird, folks. They call it that for a reason.
Okay, let's take a look at the future. I think we have to talk about 3 of the trailers that dropped this week because one of them in particular, you and I have some differing opinions on.
Oh, what's that one?
Let's talk about Candyman, Dan.
Although I heard, give us sort of the byline on it.
Okay, so it's a direct sequel, which I was wondering about. It's not a remake.
Yes,
to the 92 classic with Tony Todd returning as Candyman, mysterious urban legend in a Chicago neighborhood. We're assuming it's like a South Side-esque Chicago neighborhood. And he can be summoned by the chanting of his name, and it's a Jordan Peele production. Paints a suspenseful atmosphere with the help of the Destiny's Child song "Say My Name." That was probably my least favorite thing about it, actually, because he just did it with Put 5 on it for the Us trailer, and so it feels a little cheapened by making this a thing that they're doing, a '90s R&B jam, redone in a horror style. Other than that, though, I think it looks awesome. Neil Acosta is the director, and this is officially, I think, the first wide horror movie directed by a woman of color.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that. The trailer, like, I thought the trailer was interesting. Apparently, so someone on the horror, if you get horror fans, go to the horror subreddit on Reddit, and they're talking about like how, and this is not really spoilers, I don't think, but like the main character was technically in the original film as a baby. He's the actual baby in the film. So there's like that. I think his mother's also in this.
The character
so there's
Yahya Abdul-Mateen plays.
Yeah.
Okay,
so I
cool.
think there's like a direct line here. I already hate it. Look, the thing that it's clear in the trailer what's going to happen, that, you know, Candyman's going to possess him in some way, and he's going to be like, am I crazy? Am I not? He's going to end up sort of being part of the killer. Or is he killing, or is it Candyman inside of him? I don't know. I'm not that keen on it. I liked the look of it, and I liked the music of it. I think that story element is just so played out, and it's so 90s, and it's so like an attempt at postmodernism and self-identity, and I'm just not.
You're not here for
there
it
with it. I think it's gonna blow up though. Are you kidding me?
Oh yeah,
June
totally.
12th. This thing's gonna be like, I would guess like $50 million opening weekend. It'll be one of the biggest horror openings of the last few years. It won't hit like Halloween, like $76-80 million opening weekend, but it'll be up there. I mean, this thing's going to be massive.
Yeah, I think it's already carved out a sequel for itself just by the hype alone.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited about it. I think I mean I don't think you're wrong. I think when it comes down to it, horror movies all strip away all the style. You still have to have a solid story, and maybe they don't have that. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, and then I also talk about a movie that is something I thought my kids would be super excited about, because like the log line is actually, I mean, you have to think about it. Kids movies, your standards have to go down a lot if it's not Pixar, and even though Onward looks terrible, but we'll see how that plays out next week. But the trailer for Rumble came out from Paramount, and it's just like, it sounds like a 5-year-old came up with the idea. It's professional wrestlers that are also monsters. And
cool.
So I thought for sure, like, I didn't even watch the trailer first by myself. I was just like, this sounds like right up my kid's alley. So I put it on for my sons, and we watched it. And at the end of it, we were all just like, yeah, that looks all right. So I think this is something where the conception was good, but the execution looks pretty lackluster, which makes sense. It's Paramount. In a
joint production with WWE Studios.
Yeah.
Which didn't even existed. Oh my god. This looks like they're dumping it though. January 29th, 2021.
Oh,
so they might.
You're right.
And Will Arnett's like the kiss of death for voice animation for some reason. Dude. I don't know why. He just signs up for anything. He's got like tax problems or something.
So
but
yeah,
you don't think it's going to do anything?
No. I think it just looks bad. It just looks really poorly thought out and not very clever and pretty.
Yeah, children's films are like that though, aren't they? It's really just top shelf and then bottom of the barrel swill.
Yeah, it's
like there's nothing in between.
Last but not least, I think you're more excited about this one than I am. Let's talk about Saint Maud.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, totally.
Yeah, comes out April 3rd. But new trailer just dropped for it this week from A24. I mean, I'll definitely see it, but I'm curious what looks so compelling to you about it.
It looks to me like I think body horror specifically is making a comeback. I don't know why. I think just like it was one of those, like, I think it was bigger in the 80s. It felt like, in the 90s it was definitely underground. In the 2000s, it came out in torture porn, but like that's not really body horror,
right?
Traditionally. And so like this mixture of the religious elements with the psychological, but a lot of the body stuff. You know, one of the things that's interesting is that with a lot of the religious horror stuff, exorcists, all that kind of stuff, the scariest stuff, obviously, the devil, demons, stuff like that, but it's the weird body contortions and sort of digressions and transgressions of the corporal being that really gets people, right? And I think that's like they're really hitting that mark on this. Is this going to do well? Absolutely not. Nobody's going to see this
we're
movie.
on the same page about that.
This is from BFI technically through A24. So this is an art film through and through. I think art film Twitter is going to eat this thing up. I think it's going to have a little bit of a vanguard sort of cult following, but financially it's a non-starter. Like A24 could put like $30 million behind this and no one's going to see it. And if they did release it like that, F cinema score, 20% verified audience score, people would hate it. So it looks amazing and I'm really into it, but it's definitely more for your niche genre fans than anything, I would say.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I have a bad taste in my mouth still from seeing Stigmata in theaters.
Oh my God. Stigmata, opening weekend.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I think we might have gone together.
We
actually.
probably saw it together.
Yeah, Billy Corgan did the score, I believe.
Hey, dude, let's do Stigmata on like Thursday afternoon.
Capitol Cinemas.
Yeah, let's do it. It looks great. Friday night, and there's like 6 people in the theater, and they're like older adult drunks, and they're just sort of like, I don't know, I didn't know what else to do with my life than us.
Poor choices.
Oh man, love it.
Okay, that's
cool.
all I got for the Time Machine this week. Thanks, Dan.
Cool. Awesome. Let's briefly talk about what's coming out in the next couple of weeks and we'll close it out. Next weekend is the big one, 2 big ones, Onward and The Way Back. Onward's predicted to be in about $55 million right now, closing out at 210 domestically is what Box Office Pro is saying. I don't have a read on it. I mean, do you have a better read on it? I just don't.
I just think it looks bad. It's I guess people that have seen advanced screenings are kind of putting it somewhere in the middle of Pixar's catalog.
It doesn't look like a Pixar film to me.
It doesn't
at all.
It
at
looks,
all. I thought it was like DreamWorks or whatever the hell that.
I don't know what they're thinking, man.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna hit 55. I'd be lucky if it gets 40. I think it's gonna perform. Way Back, I think we both think it's gonna break out.
Yep.
Box Office Pro dropped their prediction about 11%. I don't know why. They're thinking $8 million opening weekend, $25 million. That's no. That thing's gonna make like $20 million opening weekend.
At least 15. Yeah,
at least mid-teens on higher, and then have a good run, probably to like 45 or something, like a 3x multi. And then of course Bloodshot we talked about. They're saying $11 million. Why am I the only one who thinks this is gonna make like $30 million?
It looks like such trash, man.
I think I'm like stuck in like 1997, like mentally and emotionally.
This is not Triple X.
This is not Triple X or Pitch Black. The Hunt also coming out on the 13th. There's a lot coming out on the 13th. I still believe My Spy. They're saying 9 million, 10 million for The Hunt. I think it might be higher than that.
Is The Informer still coming out next week too?
I don't even know what that is. What's The Informer?
The Joel Kinnaman thriller. Like they keep pushing it back. I don't know.
Informer. Let me look it up. Hold on.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
Also, Emma expands next week. We should keep an eye on that.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
you don't think
we should,
but you don't want to.
No, but it's like, where's it gonna go? Like, it's old clothes movie. Like,
look at Little Women. I really think that.
But Little Women had all of like the Timothy had Saoirse, like Greta, like it just had that cast.
You're saying Bill Nye doesn't have that kind of cash?
No, definitely not. I still believe My Spy. I guess the biggest one in March is going to be, Mulan's kind of screwed because of what's going on with the virus.
Yep.
It's supposed to open up big in China. That's not going to happen. They're still shut down. Will be probably for the next couple of months.
And then Film Twitter skewered Mulan again because they came up with their reasoning why they're not including the Shang Li character.
Yeah. Don't want to cross them. And then of course Quiet Place Part 2.
That's going to be the only surefire hit.
Yeah. They're saying $72 million opening weekend.
Yep. I believe it.
You think that's high? I don't know. I think it's pretty high. I feel like more like a 50, close out 150, something like that, or 140.
Maybe.
Who knows? All right, that's all I got. That's all we got. Thanks for listening. This has been the Wild Line Podcast. We will be back next weekend.
Thanks, everyone.